we're live with Tool Talk. Ask a Plumber. We're here with Dan Shingler with Sonas Kitchen and Bath, and Chris Patrick of Bob Means Plumbing. And I'm Jeff, and this is Sarah, and we're with the Carlisle Tool Library. A little bit about us. We're a tool library of over 900 tools where members can come in and borrow tools so they can lend things from the tool library, take them home, use them at home, and then bring them back. Kind of like a book library, but instead of books, it's tools. We also offer workshops normally, but since everyone's kind of stuck at home, we've decided to go online. And so this is our first in our Tool Talk series, and we're glad to be here. So we will start it off. Why don't we go to you, Chris, and you can tell us a little bit about your business.
Hi, I'm Chris Patrick. I am the president of Bob Means Plumbing. We are a second generation family owned plumbing company in Mechanicsburg. My uncle, Bob Means, founded the business in 1996. It was my very first job. I started there when I was 14, I think, 14 or 15, digging trenches and doing all the grunt work no one wanted to do. We've since grown into basically a full service residential and commercial plumbing company. We employ master plumbers who do just commercial work, residential work. We do service work. We do a little bit of industrial, some municipal type work. We have been lucky enough to be somewhat busy over the last couple of weeks. Our office is opening up again starting Monday. A little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Mechanicsburg. Spent some time in the Marine Corps after high school, and then went on to Dickinson College in Carlisle, where I met Sarah. And when I graduated, my uncle, Bob, when I graduated, told me he hopes I don't ever find a job in the professional career I studied at college because he wanted me to come back to work. And I did. And so here we are. Bob Means Plumbing. Thanks.
Nice. Sounds like a good fit.
Yeah, great.
All right, Dan.
I am Dan Shingler, and my company is Sonas Kitchen and Bath. Originally started my business in 2005 as Shingler Home Improvements. I was in Hummelstown at that time and came out of necessity. I've always been handy. I have a background in electrical work and picked up a lot of other trades. Guess it runs in my blood through a few different generations now. And I did all kinds of handyman work and slowly identified what I liked to do and what I didn't like to do. And long story short, about 5 years in, I really discovered I like kitchen and bathroom work. It involves all of the trades. It's very difficult to manage the job and all of the trades on it. So it's handy when you have people who are able to do more than one trade. So when I'm there, I do plumbing and electrical at the same time, rather than having 2 or 3 guys trying to work around each other in a very small bathroom. It just doesn't work. So now my main focus, I changed the name when I moved to Carlisle a couple years ago. This is the home of my wife's family, so we moved back here, and it's now Sonas Kitchen and Bath. And I primarily work around the Carlisle area with design and remodeling of kitchens and bathrooms.
Nice. So this series is all about getting public questions. So if you have a question, please either comment on the YouTube video or our Facebook page, and we'll bring those up. We have a few questions, but I'm going to start with one of my own. So I would describe myself as an adequate plumber. I'm more of a handyman of many trades, but plumbing is so-so on the skills list. So in terms of when you have, say, an old house and you need to renovate, say, even if you're redoing the entire kitchen, and this house has old black steel pipe, what is your go-to for switching? Do you keep the black pipe? Do you switch to something else? What's your preference?
So the majority of old houses, particularly in the Carlisle area, their sewer systems are a mix of cast iron pipe, galvanized steel pipe, and in some places lead and copper piping as well. I am of the belief if you're renovating a house and you have the walls open and the pipe exposed, you should cut it out and replace it. Really, the best replacement for it would be PVC pipe. Cast iron, even if it looks like it's in great condition, will eventually erode, will eventually break down, and will eventually leak. So while you have a house torn apart in the middle of renovating, it absolutely makes sense at that point to upgrade the piping and get it all replaced.
Yeah, and I agree, because most of my bathrooms or kitchens, I'm moving something, so I'm going to have to change it anyway. So I'll cut it back to a place where it's accessible, and run new from there.
Nice.
We had a few questions on the Facebook event page. So the first question that we had was a question asking about a running toilet. So one of our friends commented, and she said she has a toilet that constantly runs. What are some things you can suggest for a toilet that?
You're gonna hear a little echo.
Here we go. Sorry about that.
A running toilet, a plumbing secret. Every plumbing company loves running toilets because they're easy fixes for us. 9 times out of 10, the problem with the running toilet is the flapper in the center of it. As flappers get old, public water systems have chlorine in them that can kind of harden rubber parts. But the flapper won't seal over the flush valve properly and let water run down through. Again, 9 times out of 10, that's all the problem is. You get into some more complicated scenarios. A toilet tank has what's called a fill valve in it, which can get clogged up with debris. So that's also kind of common in old houses, particularly as the water lines start to degrade. So you could have the debris keeping the fill valve open and letting the water run nonstop. Very rarely you might have a problem with porcelain or with the flush valve in the center itself and water leaking out around that. But 9 times out of 10, the first fix would be the flapper.
Yeah, the other thing you can do is if you take the top of the tank off, lift that up, there's you'll see a round tube in there. Depending how old the toilet is, most of them have marks on them now that say like fill level, and there's a float in there. If that got bumped or bent, that float could not shut the water off, and it might be filling up right to the very tip of that tube, which will allow some water to run in. I think, did we lose our host?
I think that maybe we did. I was just about to see if we could put a picture of the inside of a toilet up. The magics of the internet. Dan, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. If the water is up to the top of that, Chris, what's the name of that actual tube? Is there
It's called the overflow tube.
Okay, so if the water is to the top of that overflow tube, then you just have to adjust your float. And sometimes there's a screw that you can turn that will push that float down so it will stop earlier. That would be one other thing that I could think of.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get a good photo here. Let's see.
They're coming back to us. Good, because we can't see the questions.
We're back.
Yay, we missed you.
The whole computer just froze. So let me see if we're still connected to the YouTube.
We answered that question, and Chris was looking for a picture online while we discussed that. I don't know if you have another question that we could maybe go to while he was pulling up a picture. We could bounce back to that for a visual for them.
Yeah, give me one.
I got it right here.
Got it?
There we go. Perfect. Are we live right now, Sarah?
We are live again. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry about that, folks. Looked like we had some technical difficulties, but we're back. And Chris, I don't know if you can just like very briefly go over that last question.
Yeah, let me show what Dan was talking about here. Everyone see my screen?
Yep.
All right, so this is the inside of a toilet. So like we were talking about, 9 times out of 10, the problem with the running toilet is right here on the bottom, the flapper. They can look different ways. Sometimes they can have a foam float that hangs from the chain. But what happens over time as flappers get old, the rubber starts to harden and it doesn't create a good seal with the base of the flush valve here, where you can see where the blue flapper meets the black gasket. So when it starts to harden, the water from the tank will just run down through and you'll hear that running sound. What Dan was talking about here in the center, this is called the overflow tube. The point of this is if your toilet fills nonstop, the water will dump over the top of this and down into the bowl and drain away. The reason for that is so that the toilet doesn't overflow. A lot of times what might happen is if the float here isn't set correctly, or something might get caught up or stuck in the tank, the water fills up and just constantly dumps over this overflow down into the toilet. And like Dan said, an easy fix for that, this is a float ball type system, and there's a screw on top here that you can use to adjust the water level. But that typically is what a leaking toilet will look like inside.
Perfect.
Great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
So here's another question. First time homeowner here. We have an oil boiler for heating our water and baseboard heat. The problem lies when we take a shower or bath, trying to get consistent hot water to come out. We have hot water at the different faucets. I replaced the mixing valve in the tub faucet, just not sure what else to do.
Okay, so when you heat hot water through an oil boiler, you are heating the water through what's called a domestic coil. So your boiler is not only creating heat for your home and your HVAC system, it's also creating hot water for your domestic use. So if you look at the front of your oil boiler, you'll see generally what is 2 small 1/2-inch pieces of copper. One goes into the boiler and one comes out. What happens inside the boiler is as the cold water goes through, it goes through what's called a coil. So it spins inside through very thin copper piping. Then it extracts heat from the boiler and comes out the other side hot and goes to your shower and fixtures. If you're having inconsistent hot water in a house with a domestic coil, typically it means that the coil needs to be cleaned. Because they're very small piping inside the boiler, it's a great place for hardened minerals inside water or different debris to kind of build up inside. And so you're not getting the full flow of water through. What happens is you might have hot water at a faucet because it's a very low flow fixture and might only be 1/2 gallon a minute. But when you get to a shower and you're trying to get 2.5 gallons a minute through that domestic coil, you're not going to get as much water through. So you're going to get very inconsistent hot water.
Well, I'd like to try and bring Dan into the conversation. So I've got a question. I was wondering what the kind of the strangest thing that you've ever been asked to put into either a kitchen or a bathroom, what that might be.
Strangest thing.
So maybe a personal story. I've seen bathrooms, and I don't know if I'd call them fancy or not, but one bathroom I saw had those clear tiles, those like block bricks, and they were all lit up around the bathtub. So the bathtub completely glowed when
I'm much more of a traditional design person. I can get a little bit to the contemporary, but it's going to be more of a modern contemporary. So chances are, if someone came to me with an idea like that, I would have said that, you know, you're probably better off with another contractor, because I just don't have the passion for that. So yeah, some of that, I mean, I just did a custom tile shower where we did a take on a waterfall. I can try to dig one up, a picture of it up, but we had blue tile coming down. Sorry, you guys probably can't see that, from the, and tiled into the corner and then making a curve as it hit the bottom of the floor. It was more of a beach type influence in that bathroom, and they wanted this vision of a waterfall, so I came up with that. I'll look for a picture of it.
tile work is not easy when you're trying to cut everything. That's one of the things that at the tool library a lot of people have actually taken out as our tile saws. It seems to be a popular home project, and I would definitely not relish anyone having to do curves in tile.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, but it's rewarding when it's done and everyone's happy. You know, you start with a vision of, or an idea, and you start brainstorming and you're looking at products, and you know, you're trying to put your two heads together, and sometimes it's hard for me when it's in my head to get it out onto paper and be 100% visual when you're talking something somewhat abstract like that. But it worked out. It looks really cool.
Do you also like tear down the previous kitchen when you do your projects?
Yeah.
Has there been anything that stood out in terms of things you've demoed?
Pretty much every project has one of those, oh, look at this. I mean, you always find beer cans in the wall and cigarette butts are always stuffed in walls of houses. Occasionally you'll find something that's nice to get, you know, in older houses to dig out and give to the homeowners. But I have not been lucky to find anything like, hey, you're rich.
No bags of cash.
Not yet, at least.
No.
We've got another.
Ooh, good.
I'm gonna ask a question from the live stream. So we have a question. They're asking, so they explain that I'm trying to replace a Moen cartridge, but it seems like the prior cartridge is too big and jammed in. Is this better left to a plumber? Our water isn't getting hot in the tub, but somehow it's hot in the shower.
So it's hot in the shower, but not in the tub. That's interesting to begin with. Getting a Moen cartridge out can be difficult. Getting any tub cartridge out can be difficult, particularly if it's old. Again, when you have hardness in the water, any type of debris or minerals, it builds up, it calcifies over time. They make special tools. In fact, Moen sells a cartridge extractor. It's a special tool that you screw into the cartridge and it helps you pull the cartridge out as you tighten it down. Another typical thing that we might do to get an old cartridge out is apply a little bit of heat to the brass valve the cartridge is stuck into. When you heat metal, it expands. Oftentimes, if you just give it a little bit, it'll loosen up enough that you can pull the old cartridge out of it. I've even had to go as far as, you know, taking a hacksaw or a knife and cutting the cartridge apart inside the brass house and pulling it out in pieces. So if you're not comfortable with any of that, then yes, it's best left to a professional.
I'm assuming when they say cartridge, they're talking about the PosiTemp cartridge. And if that's the case, the Moen has to be installed in a certain direction because there's more volume put to the tub than to the shower. So I mean, I guess if there's something wrong with the cartridge, it could be a possibility that because of the volume going to the tub, it just doesn't get it as hot as going to the shower. But that's just a guess. I don't have any experience to say that could be actually what it is.
Yeah, they followed up just now. They said it's only 1 year old. They think possibly it's the wrong size. And yes, it is the hot water cartridge. So
Hot water cartridge or PosiTemp cartridge?
So they might have a Moen 2-handle faucet, or even a Moen 3-handle faucet, which has a hot and a cold, and then has a faucet or handle in the center to go to the tub or shower. There's a lot of different variations. I would say that the cartridge is sold with the valve itself. So I would find it hard to believe that the old cartridge was too big or the wrong size. So my guess is if they can't get it out again, they have an issue with some hard water buildup or something that kind of solidified that cartridge inside. They all come out eventually. Sometimes it's not pretty or easy. They all come out eventually.
well, we put your phone number and email and Facebook and website for both of you in the YouTube description. So maybe
Okay, yeah. If they are able to take a picture and upload it to the Facebook page or the YouTube, wherever this is going to be, if any of us see it, just alert us. I can pop in and contact them. That's fine.
awesome. Thank you.
So here's another question. I have 2 bathroom sinks and want to convert one of them to a kitchen sink. The counter size is 21.5 inches. Is it possible to squeeze a 22-inch drop-in sink? It's okay if it's janky.
That sounds like a damn question there.
Yeah, could you read that one more time?
They have 2 bathroom sinks and want to convert one of them to a kitchen sink. The counter size is 21.5 inches. Is it possible to squeeze a 22-inch drop-in sink? And they say it's okay if it's janky.
I'm confused.
It sounds like if it's janky, it means you're going to have you're going to be missing part of your countertop, which is going to reduce the overall functionality and stability of your counter.
Okay, so there's a couple terms. Sink is the vessel itself. There's a countertop and there's a vanity. So when they say they have, let's disregard 2 of them. They have a bathroom sink that's 21.5 inches, and they want to fit a 22-inch sink in. That's where I'm getting confused at what the actual question is.
It sounds like the math is not fully there.
My guess is, Dan, aren't a lot of vanity tops 21 inches front to back, and then they have the 1/2-inch overhang on the front?
A standard vanity size is 21.5 inches deep, and your countertop would be 22 to 22.5 inches. Yes.
Maybe
but even then your sink is not going to be more than probably 15 inches because your faucet's behind it. So maybe they have a 21.5-inch vanity and they have a 22-inch top they want to put on, which may or may not fit. I'm a little confused, so I can't say for sure.
That's okay.
Pictures. Put them in the notes below.
But if you're trying to sell your house, it's usually a best bet to make sure it's going to fit. If you're just going for functionality, then jank away.
Jacob.
So we got another question here.
Wait, actually, do you wanna ask a fun one?
Sure.
About you had a good one that they had a good answer to, and I think the reasoning was really important for people to know it too. So part of this is part of the reason I like this question is I feel like it's easy to have people give you ideas and suggestions, and they come from a good place, but they might not always what's the word, have the best result. So go ahead and ask your question. I think it's helpful to kind of get those misnomers and misconceptions out of the way.
This is the faucet.
Shark one.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of best practices, this is related to another question. So I'll just ask this part of it. What would you or would you not use a shark bite if you're fixing copper pipes? And even in the case of, that for an inexperienced user, anyone can use a shark bite. So why maybe not?
Chris, you want to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. I would not use a shark bite. But that's for me as a professional. Shark bites, when they came out, and they've been around in various forms for some time. They're usually called push fit or push to fit. Shark bite is a name brand type of fitting. They're really popular among DIYers because they make plumbing incredibly easy and incredibly simple. As a professional, a shark bite connection, a shark bite seal is really far from what you would expect to pay a professional to come to your house and put in. We do use shark bites in the middle of projects. If we have to cap off a water line that we know we're going to be repairing in the future, a shark bite is a quick and easy way to cap it and then take it off and make a real connection. The problem with shark bites, one, if you're inexperienced with them, it is very easy to, as you're slipping it over the pipe, it's very easy to nick the O-rings that are inside and cause yourself a leak in the future. Shark bites also, while they have longevity, they've been around for a long time. They don't make very solid connections between two pieces of pipe. So the pipes can bend, they can twist, they can twirl around in a circle, and cause you problems as they come apart in the future. And again, I know they're really popular. I know Home Depot and Lowe's probably have stock in the shark bite company because they sell them off the shelves. But as a professional, it's just not a great connection between two pieces of pipe.
Yeah, that was a pretty thorough answer. I don't have much to add to that, except that I agree 100%. Unless there is no other possible way to connect the pipe, I don't use them. And actually, I don't keep them on my truck. I keep lots of shark bite caps on my truck because they come in very handy when I'm cutting a pipe and I need to cap it off for a day or two. But I prefer any other method over a shark bite. If you are going to use a shark bite, make sure it's somewhere where you can see it regularly or have access to it, because if it does start to drip or come apart, it's best that it's in a basement or something like that.
So got a few more questions here.
I have a picture of that shower if you want to see that quick.
Please do.
Hold on, let me share screen here. Can you see it?
Yeah, we can see it.
Nice.
That looks really cool.
Yeah, so that the blue was glass, so when it was wet, it really sparkled too. It was nice. It's hard to, unfortunately, it's hard to get pictures of bathrooms. There was blue tied in elsewhere in that shower also, but.
Is that the mesh tile that you get that kind of comes in like a pad? You just cut it to form?
Yes. I spent a lot of time with little tiny tiles cutting curves, and it's even harder to cut that arc when all the tiles move.
Right. Are you using a
Yeah.
grinder or
Grinder and wet saw. Yeah. Still have 10.
that's good.
Thank goodness.
All right, so here's a question. It seems like it's a venting question. How can I tell if I have a venting issue? And looks like there's 2 parts. They would have trouble putting in a trap.
That was for the sink.
Oh. Yeah. How can I tell if I have a venting issue? I'm not sure where they're coming from with that question.
Probably with their drain pipe. If they have a vent, you have slow drain. Other things might bubble. You might hear gurgling in a sink somewhere. Again, probably better suited for Chris. He probably can give you 10 different things.
The easy answer is if you live in an old house, you probably have a venting problem. Venting wasn't a big deal way back in the day. A lot of times you might have so a quick story on venting. The way venting works, if you can imagine having a soda glass at a diner, and you put your straw in and you put your finger over the straw and lift the straw out, the soda stays inside the straw. And then as soon as you move your finger off, it all drains out. Plumbing works the exact same way. To have water go down a drain, you have to introduce air into the system. Otherwise, it becomes airlocked like your soda straw. So for your fixtures to work properly, for your toilet to flush, for your bathroom sink to drain, for your tub to drain, as the water's going down the sewer line, it has to be drawing air from somewhere else. So if you drive through your neighborhood and you look at people's roofs and you see pipes sticking out to the roof, that's a plumbing vent. That allows air into the system so the water can drain. Venting really wasn't put into the plumbing code until probably a little older than me, but not by much, probably like the 70s. Back in the day, they either had no vents at all, or they might have just put a small, like 1-inch pipe. Dan, you probably see it a lot, the little 1.25-inch piece of galvanized that comes off of a house and goes through the roof. So if you have gurgling in your pipes, if you drain your sink and it comes up in your bathtub, if you flush your toilet and you get that really clunky gurgling sound, a lot of times that is a problem with venting. It is very difficult to repair correctly without having invasive plumbing into your walls. They make mechanical vents that you can add in places under sinks here and there. But a venting problem can be a very large fix to do it the right way.
Gotcha. All right, so we've got another one for you here, Chris. So it says your Uncle Steve would like to know how long a copper service entrance pipe can be expected to last.
A copper service entrance pipe. The question is, I don't have an answer for that. Copper is a mineral, it's a metal, and it can be reacted upon by whatever is in your soil outside. So you might have copper if it's installed properly from the street to your house. It's bedded in sand because sand is generally not reactive. Really, that tend to never happen. It just gets put in the dirt. So if you have high pH in your soil outside, it could start eating through copper and giving pinholes. We come across service piping that has been in the ground for 60 years. We come across service piping that pinholes started, maybe 10 years later. It's really difficult to nail down an expected life expectancy on that kind of pipe.
They say it was installed in 1965. I was going to say 1965.
Then if you have a chance to replace it, I would probably consider replacing it.
Gotcha. Great. All right, I've got a question here for Dan. If you had the if you had your perfect setup for a kitchen or a bathroom, what are some design elements that you are sure to add in to any kitchen design or bathroom design?
Space. Space is the number one answer. It's rare that I get into a bathroom that's too big. I've had the pleasure of doing some that are a nice size, and it makes it easy. Is you never have enough storage in a kitchen or a bathroom either. No matter what you do, if you have the storage, you find a way to fill it up, and then you need more storage. So what was the original question? Ideal?
Yeah, kind of like design elements that you try and frame into as many projects as you can for your ideal kitchen.
Oh, well, first of all, bathroom, I hate to see a toilet through the doorway. So if I can get the toilet out of view from the main living area, the hallway, whatever, of the doorway, and it's also not right next to the door where someone opens it, it hits the toilet or the person on the toilet. So that's the main thing in a bathroom for me, is that where does that toilet go? I don't often have the luxury of moving toilets, but it seems about half the bathrooms I find a way to move them one way or another. It's 50-50 shot if it can be moved, and I don't find out till I open up a floor or something that, the way the floor joists are and that 3-inch pipe, if I'm going to be able to get to it. Kitchen, it is a busy area, and there's often lots of doorways, passageways, windows, and they're all the design elements that I have to work around. So I can't say that there's ideal as much as what can I do given what I have. I don't move a lot. I try not to move walls if possible, but it seems lately more walls have been getting moved than not. For a long time, I tried to design right within that space. One, for cost, but also if I can increase the functionality and the storage without moving walls, there's really no downside to it. So ideal, there is no ideal. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I've got a few walls in my kitchen space I would love to take down, rearrange. And back to your toilet, I've got a bathroom where it just opens up and basically hits the toilet. Yeah. So recently, one of the best decisions I've made all year is I installed one of those, install on your toilet bidets. And fantastic, I love it. But if the door opens too much, it'll just crash right into that arm of the bidet and just completely destroy it. So with it, I had to drill in a lovely little doorstop right in the floor, basically. And that's about the best option I had, which, sometimes you don't have great options when you're doing it yourself at your own home.
Yeah.
I want to hear about, so when we were speaking yesterday briefly, you said you had some pretty good stories, Dan. And Chris, I imagine you probably have some pretty good stories too. Are there any plumbing stories, maybe like best or worst moment, or, I guess, Jeff, you kind of asked this a little bit before, but what are some of your favorite plumbing stories to tell? Or what are some of the most unique situations you've found yourself in?
Any plumber worth their weight has found themselves in some very unique, odd situations. We do a lot of work in orchards down in York Springs. We have a customer who has very large apple orchards down there. Orchards are a very popular place for snakes. So I always loved being underneath houses down there or trailers down there trying to fix plumbing and coming across, giant rattlesnake skins or giant snake skins. I'm deathly afraid of snakes. So that's my least favorite experience. When I was younger, I got stuck in a manhole when a pressurized sewer line broke underneath me. And I remember I was down in the manhole. I was trying to fix the sewer main, and the old plastic piping cracked, and it was a pressurized main. So it was, spewing up around me inside a manhole. And I remember my uncle, who had the lucky job of standing outside the manhole, just laughing. All I could hear, I can still hear the cackle of his laugh as this sewage is just spraying everywhere. And I remember climbing out of the manhole, stripping down to my underwear, getting in my car, and just driving home. I left my clothes there. I left everything there. I just left. Every plumber has that one experience where you get sewaged.
Ooh, that's a word for it. Sewage.
Sewage.
Savage.
Dan, you got one you want to share too?
I have plenty. I don't know if I need it to be recorded forever and ever, but I have one good memory that some people might not want to hear, but following Chris's, it's probably fine. This was on a kitchen job, and I do not build additions, but they wanted a bigger kitchen, so they hired another contractor to add on 3 to 5 feet onto the back of the house in the kitchen area. They did the foundation, they framed it up and roofed it and did the outside, and I did all the interior work after they were done. A month later, we're finishing up the kitchen and interior renovations. We moved a lot of walls and stuff in there, and I had to go down into the crawl space where this addition was created, and I crawled into the crawl space, and it felt soft under the plastic. There's stone, but it felt bouncy. I wasn't quite sure what was going on. And then we realized, well, for the past 2-3 weeks we've been working there, we smelled an odor, sewer type odor. And that's when I realized that maybe their sewer line goes out under this addition, and when they excavated for the foundation, they may have hit the sewer line, which they did, and it had filled up that crawl space the whole time we worked there. So that contractor had to come back and send guys in to dig out that crawl space by buckets.
That's a good one.
That's horrible. It was horrible.
I've always wondered, in some of the like older houses that you see, like even around Carlisle, how are they stopping septic from like backing up into people's houses? Even just normally.
Carlisle has had a problem in the past couple years where sometimes they can't stop sewage from backing up into people's houses.
Really?
Plumbing systems all work on the idea of gravity. So if you hear an old plumber tell you shit flows downhill. So, as a sewer system is designed on the city scale, all the pipes in the street are flowing generally downhill, or they're flowing to pump stations where it pumps up and goes somewhere else. And then all of the sewer mains coming out of your houses are generally flowing downhill into the sewer main, or into a pump and pumping out of your house. So as long as everything is working properly without any blockages, everything just kind of keeps on rolling downhill till it eventually gets to a sewer system or a pump. A lot of times what happens in municipalities is their sewer mains clog under streets. I know this happened on Hanover Street maybe 6 months ago. And you have a massive blockage, and it starts to kind of just fill up the bucket. And as the bucket starts to fill, it finds ways out. And a lot of times that might be a clean out in someone's basement, or a shower that they might have in a basement. and you know, sewage just kind of backs up that way. But if everything goes the way it's supposed to, it all just kind of flows downhill.
I guess that kind of leads to a very technical question that we got. What are the specs for the fall of a waste line?
Sounds like someone's trying to trip up the plumber on his codes. It depends on the size of the waste line. So 4-inch pipe and larger has to slope at an 1/8 inch per foot. Smaller than that has to slope at a 1/4 inch per foot. Those are minimum slopes per code. You can always go more than that, but a problem you get if a pipe flows, if the slope is too great and a pipe flows downhill, the water actually runs faster than what the solids might be in that sewer line. So the solids get stuck uphill while the water rolls down a lot quicker. So you try to keep it between that 1/8 and that 1/4 inch, depending on your size of pipe. What's that?
So that is a small margin of error.
It is. Luckily, they make plumber levels that have little marks at the 1/8 and the 1/4 inch per foot slope. So it makes it easier.
Wow. Andy, probably get one of those at the tool library. So here's a question for you. If the tool library has a few plumbing tools, namely PEX crimpers, cutters, some soldering and welding tools, but if you had, say, like a handful of tools that you were going to use for plumbing, what would they be? Like the tools that the tool library should have.
For me personally, when I was in the field, I always had a crescent wrench in my pocket, a set of channel locks in my pocket, and an adjustable or like a 4-way screwdriver. And I ran a lot of service calls when I was a plumber, and there wasn't a whole lot that I couldn't do without those couple of tools. As you start to look at more specialized plumbing tools, at our company, we have started using high-powered crimp tools. So we crimp copper, we crimp steel gas lines. They've become very handy, particularly in remodeling situations where you can't always get to a spot where you can thread metal piping. So those have become handy over the years. Cordless tool sets are almost, you know, we use them by the minute on all of our job sites. A lot of plumbing tools haven't really changed a whole lot over the years. You know, you got your giant pipe wrenches. You've got, like I said, the biggest advance is probably power crimping.
Is that crimping over soldering? Like you're not soldering those joints?
Yeah, we've been slowly trying to move away from soldering over the last about 18 months. Soldering is a necessary skill for plumbers. It's something we'll always have to do. However, it is very labor intensive. When you're doing it on a large scale, we do a lot of commercial work where you might be soldering 1,000 fittings on a job site. So an error rate on 1,000 fittings might be, you know, 5% even. That's a lot of leaking fittings on a job like that. So power crimping has a much lower error rate on the pipe sealing. It's also a lot quicker, so it saves a lot of labor time.
Gotcha. Dan, any tools for you?
No, on my day-to-day jobs, the adjustable wrench, I have small channel locks and a normal 10, 11 inch channel locks, screwdrivers. I have a big tool bag that I have most of the tools I use, hand tools in it that I use normally, that goes in the door with me when I walk into the job. For plumbing in residential, I will need my torch for soldering and my PEX tool, and I have a PVC cutting tool that I use, and a copper cutting tool. It's probably most of the tools that I need for plumbing work. Is maintenance work on a house, like Chris said, a couple wrenches and screwdrivers, and you're in business.
Luckily, we've got most of those at the tool library. So if you need any plumbing done and you think you can do it yourself, come on in. So we have another question here. Chris, do you recommend tankless water heaters over tank water heaters?
It depends on your personal scenario, your situation. I do generally recommend gas tankless water heaters. I would never recommend an electric tankless water heater. In fact, as a company, we stopped installing them a couple years ago. But generally, if we are meeting a customer to talk about replacing their gas water heater, we will try to show them the tankless options and try to get them to move in that direction. The efficiency on them is just off the charts. It's insane. However, there is a much higher upfront cost. So you're kind of trading off, paying for the utility over the years or paying upfront for a much more efficient appliance. But generally, we do wholeheartedly recommend tankless water heaters.
Do you ever have to install anything with those to specifically deal with the hard water?
So yeah, most tankless water heaters have basically a margin of error in water quality. So the majority of them have to be down to at least 3 to 5 grains of hardness, which is a common way to measure hardness. pH can also be an issue with tankless water heaters. You're running your water through very small copper and stainless steel piping inside. So if you have a very high or very low pH, you can eat away at the metal. If you have very hard water, it will calcify inside the lines, similar to the domestic coil we talked about in the beginning of the broadcast. So you can install water softeners, acid neutralizers, stuff to balance the pH, to make the water as best as you can as it runs through. You should also maintain them yearly or every other year, flushing cleaners through them to kind of clear them out.
Nice. And this questioner also asked, cost to install a gas tankless.
Oh, not going to trip me up by throwing costs out on a YouTube broadcast. Give us a call. I'd be happy to take a look. We can do things over video or pictures. There are a lot of variables in gas tankless water heaters. One of the common ones is the gas piping in your house may not be large enough. Your typical gas-fired tank water heater is anywhere from 40,000 to maybe 75,000 BTU. A standard tankless gas water heater is anywhere from 150,000 to 200,000 BTU. So they take a lot more gas to heat water quickly. So we have to look at the gas system in your home. We have to look at how we can vent the exhaust out of your house. A gas tankless water heater cannot use a chimney that your old tank type water heater might be exhausting through. So we got to find a path out of your basement for exhaust. So it's not something that really has a standard cost to it. It definitely varies in a range.
I put one in my house and I love it. Probably. Well, I gained a big storage room because I got that big monster oil burner out of here, and now I have just one unit hanging on the wall for my heat and hot water. Yeah, it's perfect. I love it.
I had my heating done recently, and I guess I didn't even realize that you could join systems, but I'm not sure you can join a tankless hot water heater and a tank. But I have my oil joined with electric. But I guess that's a different than plumbing questions. We've got one more, and then I think I was going to leave it up to you guys for the last 5 minutes or so to ask questions if you have any for each other. So thoughts on indirect tank water heaters with oil hot water systems?
Indirect water heating, again, is a very efficient way to heat water. Anytime you look at a boiler or a heat pump or any type of HVAC heating for your home, you're creating heat that if you're not extracting that to use to heat your home, you're wasting those BTUs. So anytime you can pair your hot water heating with your boiler or your air coil or anything like that, you're basically just kind of helping yourself recycle and take back some of that wasted energy. They certainly work very fine. A lot of times you can have problems balancing them out. They can be kind of a technical issue. But I have a lot of customers with indirect oil water heaters in use.
Great. Thank you. I think that's the last official question that we'll have time for, at least from the live streamers. Did you have any questions for each other? I kind of have like a question to kind of close out, but did you want to say anything?
I don't know that I have a question, but I think it's something that people watching would like to know, that I see a lot in remodeling, and I'm sure Chris sees it as well. The supply hoses that you use to connect your faucets to the shutoffs or your toilet to the shutoffs, most of them have a rubber fitting gasket in there, O-ring. When you connect them, you just want to snug them up. You don't want to go cranking them down until you can't turn it anymore, because you compress that rubber too much, you might get it out of shape. And it's only going to lead to problems down the road. You also don't need to put Teflon tape on that little tiny area of the shutoff, because that rubber is in there to make the seal for you. So just put them on, snug them up, turn the water on. If it doesn't drip, you're good. If you're worried about it, give it another eighth of a turn and you'll be good for years and years and years.
That's great advice. Over tightening is actually a big problem in plumbing. And when you have young plumbers and you're trying to teach them, it's one of the hardest things to get them not to do. Because you always want to prove how big and strong you are and how tight you can put that fitting on. But a lot of stuff isn't designed to be tightened that hard. Fittings crack, stuff breaks, threads give. Like Dan said, if you have O-rings or gaskets or seals, a lot of them get ripped up. So when you're tightening down your plumbing, really, a couple turns past hand tight is really all that it needs to be.
And then I have another thing that just popped into my head, that again, I see a lot, or used to see a lot back when I was doing handyman work. Under your sinks, your vanity, your kitchen sink, I know it's a great place to store items, but don't store too much in there, because you're going to end up bumping something, be it your trap or your supply, and you're going to get a leak. And you won't know until it's too late, because you won't be able to see that there's a drip because you have so much stuff under there. So typically when I find out is it's been a slow drip for who knows how many years, and I'm replacing something and it's rotted the bottom of the vanity away, all the way into the floor, possibly into the ceiling below. So put stuff under there, just don't put a lot of stuff under there.
Great.
That's great advice. Kind of like the like, if you do like a spring or a fall checkup, just check most of your pipes. Make sure things are still good and working the way they're supposed to be.
I guess my last question was actually going to be along those lines, but I'll still pose it to you. So I guess, what would be your advice, or maybe just some words of wisdom, just like the number one thing, or two things that you can think of that you would want either new plumbers to know, or Chris, when you're training a new plumber, what's some of the best advice either you got when you were first starting, or that you try to teach to new plumbers? And then kind of like as a follow-up to that, so like if you are a new plumber, when is the point at which you want to call in a plumber, right? Like, how do you know this is probably beyond me? Or what are some telltale signs, like, if you're sick, you don't want to go to a doctor until you have a fever for a certain amount of time, kind of like those same lines. Maybe you have a little bit of experience with plumbing, but when would you say is usually like the time to call in a professional?
Well, I would probably say you should always call the professional from the very beginning. No, if you're going to do plumbing repairs in your house, first thing to do before you start any plumbing repair is find your main water shutoff in your basement. Go to the basement, find where the water line comes into the wall or comes up through the floor, and make sure that there's a working valve there that you can turn off. So if you cause any problems, if you cut a pipe or break something, you can run downstairs, shut your water off, and save yourself some damage. So before you do anything, find that. Honestly, I hear from a lot of people that they're scared of taking plumbing projects on, that they're afraid to change out a faucet, or they're just scared of the damage they can do. Plumbing's fun. There's not a whole lot that goes into it other than, tightening stuff, screwing stuff, gluing pipe together. I mean, it's not a difficult thing to do on your own. I think that you need to be safe. You need to make sure you're comfortable with the tools that you've borrowed from the tool library and you're using to do your projects. You need to make sure you know how to use them correctly. And like I said, make sure that you know what your out is. If you get stuck, if you get caught in a position or something goes wrong, just think 2 steps ahead. What can you do to remediate that problem quickly? I would also say when it comes to fuel gas, at that point, you should really call a professional. Don't try to replace your boiler or your oil system. Don't try to mess around with gas piping in your house. A lot of gas issues, you might not know that there's a problem until the house is full of gas. A lot of gas appliances that you put in, if you don't handle the combustion correctly, you might fill your house, with carbon monoxide pretty quickly. So I would definitely say, please, when it comes to fuel gas, don't try to do that on your own. Call in a professional for that.
Thank you. Dan, anything you want to add?
Sure. I have one last bit that I have to explain with majority of people that I work for, because we have so many options at our big box stores and online retailers now. Not all plumbing fixtures are created equal, even if they look like they are. For 10 years now, I will not install a faucet from Home Depot, Lowe's, online retailers, because I don't know what I'm getting. I don't know what parts are in it. And then I have to explain to them, I understand that you might save $100 on this faucet versus getting it at a supply house. And we have plenty of supply houses around, and the manufacturers back and support those supply houses. If there's a problem, it's easy for us to get it taken care of. So we save $100 on a faucet by buying it at Home Depot or Lowe's. I finish your job. If I'm lucky, I won't have a problem right when I install it, if I'm lucky. However, I will get a phone call a couple months later. I stand by my work. I mean, it could be 5 years later, it could be 20 years later. I want my customer to call me and say, hey, my faucet's dripping or whatever, so I can make it right. Well, all too often with those faucets, there's a problem. And one, parts have changed. Two, you can't get it. If you're not one of my customers and you had another plumber who might not warranty that type of work like that, you're going to have to call another plumber, and they're going to show up and they're going to give you a service charge. They're going to sell you another faucet that costs more. So your $100 savings just turned into, I don't know how many extra hundreds of dollars, instead of just buying a quality faucet up front or toilet. There's a variety of different things. So it's not always the cheapest that's the best option. It's, go to a local supply house and get plumbing fixtures.
Absolutely. I echo that 1,000%. We probably deal with that at least once a week, if not multiple times a week. 100%. Do not buy faucets from Lowe's or Home Depot. I will go as far as to say that, or online.
That's good to know.
Good advice.
Yeah. Well, thank you both so much. That's all we have time for today. We've run a little bit over and we want to respect your time. And we're just so grateful to both of you for joining us for this program, for taking the time to tell us about your experiences and to answer all of our plumbing questions. And we hope to see you around soon. everyone is, once the stay-at-home order is over and once everyone is able to go out again, hopefully we'll see you around the tool library or around town. So thank you again.
Thanks for
Thank
everything.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.